FileMaker has 130 plus script steps. We browsed through them briefly when we were defining a button, and that's a lot of script steps. And you're thinking, man, I'm going to go crazy trying to learn all these. Well, I want to give you an overview of the available steps so you can understand which ones are important to learn and have a lot of depth, which ones are evil and you should never use, and which are very easy to learn and have very specific uses, and once you learn them, they basically just apply directly to what you can do manually. So I have three categories here of script steps. Some that have depth and can be applied in a variety of scenarios, that's one category. Other category is evil script steps. And I say evil because I want to draw your attention to this. It's not that I don't ever use these script steps, it's that you want to use some other script step. There's usually more than one way to get to somewhere, and in most cases these evil script steps have other alternatives, other script steps that don't have the side effects that they do. And then again, you have a large majority of these steps are fairly easy to learn and have very specific uses. Let's say like go to layout or go to record. They have some special options, but not very many, and they're very easy to use, and they're very commonly used. I mean, we're using go to record right here on these buttons. Things that have depth, well, that's things like if and set field and set variables we'll go over in a second. Those have a lot more depth, and it'll take a long time to learn how to use them entirely. You can learn the very basics of them pretty easily, but how much variety can be applied to a different scenario with this script step, it's just amazing what you can do with some of these script steps. So we'll go into the first category and try to describe more in depth what script steps have a lot of depth. So the first one is perform script. This allows you from one script to perform another script. It allows you to modularize. It allows you to go ahead and do chunk scripting. You don't have to make a 100-line long script. You can break it up into pieces, kind of like chapters in a book. Rather than putting everything in one place, you can go ahead and say, well, this script is going to be the one that calls all these other scripts. And it's going to call this script, and you're going to name it appropriately so that it gives you an idea what it does. So it's a very useful technique, modular scripting, and we're going to use it a lot. So perform script can be pretty simple to think about at first, but there's also some really incredible things you can do with it as far as modular scripting. And then probably the best set of depth scripts are if, else, else if, and end if. This is your decision-making process. This allows you to say, I'm going to go here or I'm going to go there. This is incredibly important in ScriptMaker. This is not something you can do manually. I mean, you do it with your brain, but there's no if statement inside the interface of the actual FileMaker. This is something where you say, I'm going to use this calculation to decide what I'm going to do for this user based on what's currently in the system. So very powerful. We use those quite a bit. Practically in every single script you'll use those. Then we have your loop, exit loop if, and end loop. This allows you to repeat steps over and over and over again. The most common is to loop through all the records in your found set and do something similar to each one of the records. Or maybe exactly the same thing to each one of those records. But there's all kinds of loops. You have record loops, you have data loops, you have scripted loops. There's all kinds of different loops. And we're going to go over every single one of those, but not till later, because this is a more powerful feature that we really won't use until we get really into scripting, which will be in the intermediate and advanced tutorials. And then allow user abort really doesn't have a lot of depth, but I put it here because so many people don't use it. Essentially, when you're running a script, a user can cancel it on Windows by hitting the escape key, or on the Macintosh by holding down the command key and typing a period. If you have a long script that visits this layout and does this and that, and all these things, and they cancel in the middle of it, they may be stuck somewhere where they don't know where they're at, and that would be a bad thing. You don't want them to stop your script in the middle of it. So I'm going to talk about this quite a bit, and there are some things you can do to make allow user abort easier to use as a developer too. It's just not obvious when you look at the script step, because it only has two options, on or off. Then you have set error capture. And errors are things that FileMaker puts up on the screen, such as when we went into find mode and tried to find some criteria that didn't exist, it said no records found. Well, that can be a little confusing for users to see a FileMaker specific dialog. You can set error capture on and capture those errors and show your own friendly dialog that says no contacts found. Or you can have it do any number of steps. Once you capture that error, you can have it go off in any direction you want. So very powerful script step, and it really allows you to customize your solution. Then my absolute favorite is set field. Set field allows you to put a calculation result into a field. That doesn't seem like a great thing because you can do that with auto-enter calculations or do a calculation field or replace field contents, but it really has its purpose because buttons only run when you click on them. Auto-enter runs on events when you modify a record. This can be said, I want to run it right now at this moment in time. So there's the difference in using a calculation and set field. Plus, set field can set a field that you can't even see on the layout. So it's much better than manually putting a value in there. It's a really cool script step and we'll do a lot of work with it. And then you have its little brother called set variable. It's basically the same thing, but it puts the result of a calculation into a memory spot. So you could be in the contacts table and put a value, well, let's say the ID, the serial number, into a variable, go to another table and put it into a foreign key. You don't know how to do much with relationships yet, but it allows you to take values from one table to another, or just simply remember that value for a later time. Very, very powerful, and we'll do a lot with them. So those are your script steps with depth. Next section we're going to cover the evil script steps, ones you should avoid.